Hey guys, how you doing? This is Alex, and today we're talking Gen 2 6R80 boosted applications. So let's talk about making a Gen 2 Mustang run 10s, 9s, and 8s in the quarter mile with a 6R80 transmission. Now, choosing your power adder is going to be crucial because that's going to determine what other parts are going to complement that power adder. If you go with a centrifugal or turbo, you're going to need an aftermarket torque converter. If you go with any positive displacement blower, Whipple, Edelbrock, VMP, Roush, you don't need an aftermarket torque converter. Those power adders make enough torque to get you to cut a 60-foot time with the bone stock from the factory torque converter. So if you decide to go with a positive displacement supercharger, it'll save you about $1,500 from buying an aftermarket torque converter. But if you want to grow with the car and eventually run 9s and 8s and you decide to go twin turbo, well, an aftermarket torque converter is necessary for any turbo application or any centrifugal application. So again, 10 pounds of boost regardless of power adder, but centrifugal and turbo are going to need a torque converter to 60-foot well. Fueling, let's talk about fueling. Stock fuel pump to run 10s, not a problem. But you're gonna need a fuel pump voltage booster, aka a booster pump or a BAP. In my opinion, let's keep it simple. Plug and play and you're done. Fuel injector, MU52. Honestly, don't get too fancy with the injector if you're gonna stay in the 10-second zone. If you are eventually gonna move into the 9s and 8s, absolutely get at least 1,000 cc injector. In my opinion, that's the way to go. Just go right to the 1,000, buy once, cry once. But if you're on a budget, the MU52 from 13 to 14 GT500s or the high flow version of that injector that has a longer body that comes in the 20 and up GT500s is probably a better choice because it's getting harder and harder to find MU52s from 13 and 14 GT500s. And again, like I said, stock fuel rails, injector, 10 pounds of boost, depending on your power adder, you're gonna need a torque converter or not. Now let's talk about 9s. 9s, well, you're gonna need a fuel system. That's right, because you're gonna need about 700 to 800 right at that middle point, like 770 to 810, depending on how much the car weighs, in order for you to run 9 seconds. I'm saying 9.99 in the quarter mile with a Gen 2 6R80 Mustang. The injector, if you bought a 1,000 cc back when you were running 10s, smart. You don't need to upgrade the injectors, but you definitely have to upgrade the fuel system. We're talking 4 Innovations level 2 at minimum. You need 2 285 pumps, -8 lines going and coming back. I know a lot of people want to save a little money. This is not the place where you want to save money. This is the place where you want to spend good money. I would also get aftermarket fuel rails. I would not really rely on the stock fuel rails with ethanol because we're going to be running E85. That's right. The whole reason we are buying a 4 Innovations fuel system is so you can run E85 from the pump or ethanol 1R, X98 or Ignite products in order to get you some ethanol, high octane, and tons of knock resistance with the fuel and a little bit of cooling effect too. So axles and drive shaft, this is where things get a little funky. If you have a stock torque converter and you chose a positive displacement supercharger as your power adder, in my opinion, you don't need to upgrade the axles or the drive shaft. Why do I say that? This car ran Texas 2K for 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, or 2. I think I went to 2 of them in this car. Running a stock drive shaft, stock axles, running 960s, VMP Gen 3, 72 millimeter upper pulley, 10% lower. Fuel system, the thing was in the heat, running wonderful numbers. 960s in a full weight car with all the bells and whistles was probably the most fun I ever had in this car, and I missed that combo. But if you're gonna go ahead and go with turbos or centrifugals, you're gonna have to get, in my opinion, axles and a drive shaft. Why? Because now we gotta leave on a trans brake. That's right, if you wanna go 9s with turbo stuff, I don't think you can foot brake it enough in order for you to get a favorable 60 foot, which is at least a sub 1.6, has to be 1.5 or better, in order for this car to run into the 9s. So, because you're smacking the drive line with a trans brake, in my opinion, you're gonna have to go ahead and get upgraded axles and drive shaft, whereas a positive displacement supercharger does not necessarily need that axle and drive shaft, but it's a good idea to get it if you can afford it, but you can save a lot of money from having to upgrade the axles and drive shaft. So that can get you into the 9s pretty easily. Boost. You're gonna need about 15 PSI regardless of what boost you use. But if you have a very efficient turbo kit, I don't even think you need 15 PSI. I think 13 will do it. Something like an Aldo kit. I'm a big fan of Aldo twin turbo kits. So 13 or 14 PSI, depending on the turbo layout, or even a Hellion sleeper, is all you really need to run 9s in a full weight 6R80 Gen 2 Mustang. Whipple, Edelbrock, VMP, or Roush, about 15 pounds of boost, call them with the pulley combo to make that happen. So again, it doesn't really take much to go 9s. Now 8s is where I get very specific. 8 seconds, in my opinion, is big boy stuff. So let's say you bought a Mustang from the dealership and you want to go 8s. You want to bypass all that BS. You want to just get running 8.99. Well, in my opinion, this is what you should do. You should go get the trans built now. On the 10-second and 9-second applications, stock trans. Don't gotta do nothing. I would literally buy used transmissions from F-150 Gen 2s and just have them laying there for about $1,000 a pop, just in case one of your transmissions goes, and you save a lot of money. But now we're into the 8-second zone, or even low 9-second zone, where you're gonna need a built, I'm saying fully built transmission. Now, what does that mean specifically? Clutch pack, like a Raybestos or Exetti clutch pack, whoever you want to use or whoever your shop uses, you're going to need a aftermarket clutch material in there. You're also going to need a intermediate shaft. Power by the Hour sells a billet intermediate shaft. If I'm not mistaken, they sell kits that you can literally pick up the phone and say, I want a max effort 6R80 kit, and either they can build it for you or your favorite trans builder can build it for you. Again, tolerances have to really be taken into account. Not every transmission builder is the same. So the other thing you're gonna have to consider in upgrading is the billet planetary. The stock planetary is not made of billet. The front planetary is responsible for the, not the 1, 2, 3 gears, but the 4, 5, overdrive. That's questionable. I don't want to get into the weeds with technical aspects of how it works, but the forward planetary has to be upgraded for you to run 8s with a 6R80. The failure of the stock forward planet causes a huge mess inside of the transmission. When my forward planetary broke on this car, it took everything out of the transmission, and I'm sure I'll put a clip here somewhere showing you the internal damage that was caused by the forward planetary exploding. So Blue Streak out of Australia makes these forward planetaries that are made out of billet, and you can get them from Power by the Hour and any other place that carries Blue Streak products. So again, completely max effort, full built transmission with all the billet stuff you can find, because you're gonna be making upwards of about a 900 to 1,000 horsepower to get this 35 to 3,600 pound car into the 8s. So, built trans, Aldo or Hellion twin turbo kit, at least 20 PSI. I don't think you have to do anything to the motor, but it would be a good idea to at least put studs in the motor. At least, because we want to prevent the heads from lifting up off the block. So, aftermarket stud kit, built trans, Aldo twin turbo or Hellion twin turbo, 4 Innovations fuel system, injectors. you are gonna have to decide if you're ever gonna run pump gas on this car ever again. If you do eventually wanna run pump gas, turn the boost down and cruise the car, you should get an ID 1300X injector. The injector is compatible with petroleum-based gasoline or fuels and ethanol. So if you wanna turn it up, change the tune, put ethanol in the tank, this injector is probably good to 1100 rear wheel horsepower on a Coyote at about 7,500 RPMs, give or take the power adder. A positive displacement supercharger will stress out a lot more an injector because you're actually using power to make power. So just because it's a 900 rear wheel horsepower blower situation, that doesn't mean that the same injector applies for turbo stuff, which is free power from the exhaust. So you have to take that into account. So if you're never gonna run pump gas on this car, you're gonna live on ethanol, ID 1700. Now, there are competitors to this, the FIC 1440 and the FIC 1650. But now we're getting to the realm of big boy stuff. And in terms of data, Injector Dynamics does have exceptional data, so I can't really guide you into any other injector unless the budget is tight. But if the budget is tight, why are you building an 8-second Gen 2 6R80 S550? Like do a Fox body. What are you doing? Fuel system is going to need at least 2 285 pumps, Dash 8 line going in, fuel rails, aftermarket like Ford Innovations fuel rails or VMP fuel rails, or there's a couple other companies that make fuel rails, but it's not really that important. Boost reference regulator, 1-to-1, 45 PSI at idle with a boost reference line installed, or 50 PSI depending on what your tuner likes it set up as, in a Dash 8 return. You're gonna need axles, drive shaft. You're gonna need all the bracing I previously talked about on the S550 videos. Steeda stop the hop kit, Steeda drag pack, Steeda drag springs, the extra spacer. In my opinion, the Steeda drag spring with 2 spacers sold by Steeda on the bottom will allow you to tuck in a 315 tire. That's right. Forget the 305 45 17. We are now playing with big boy stuff. So the 315 tire, in my opinion, not only will allow you to get great traction on the street, but I have yet to see many, if any, people with a 315 tire actually spin at the track. If anything, what that tire tends to cause is bumper dragging. Oh my God, all 4 wheels are off the ground wheelies. So power management is gonna be a thing. If you're gonna go ahead and go turbo, I would highly urge you to go with an AMS 2000. Yes, it is not cheap, but it is insanely programmable, has wheelie control settings, and has other outputs you can log other things with. So I think that's a great idea to at least have a very competent boost controller company in there. AMS 2000, 315 tire, because with the 315 tire, you're gonna need wheelie control, ID 1300s or 1700s, depending if you run pump gas or not. All the suspension mods, Vikings front and rear, drive shaft, axles, you name it, all the stuff. And that can get you into the 890 range. The only reason I say that is because I've seen it happen about 800 times. And one of the examples I use most of the time is Corey Grayle's car has been 870s, and if I'm not mistaken, 860s with the bone stock motor studded with all the parts that I mentioned. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this Gen 2 6R80 boosted video, what it takes to run 10s, 9s, and 8s. Stay tuned for Gen 3 stuff coming up soon. Thanks for listening, guys. Talk to you later.